Hello.
Yeah, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Unbelievable. Thank you for asking.
Wonderful. And who do I have the pleasure of speaking to today?
My name is Dave Sanderson.
Dave Sanderson. And Dave Sanderson, who are you?
Who am I? Well, I'm just a humble guy trying to make a living, doing the best I can. Or I been a top sales producer for some very large companies, or I was the last passenger to survive the plane crash known as The Miracle on the Hudson, the movie Sully.
Wow. That is an amazing story that we're about to all hear.
Look forward to sharing it with you.
I mean, wow. What does it feel like? Sorry, this is like such a simplistic question, which I'm sure you've received hundreds and hundreds of times, but I can't control myself.
Okay.
What does it feel like to be on a plane that is literally about to crash?
Leon, there's different phases, right? Once you hear it, you don't think much about it because, planes have multiple engines, okay? Then you hear the captain say, "This is your captain impact." Now you know something's going down, but you don't know exactly. Is it a terrorist attack? What is going on? And then third, you pass over a bridge, and within 1 minute you can see water, and you're going straight nose down into the water. That is the moment that you realize you may not be coming back. This is it. I think if you talk to the majority, if not all, the passengers on the plane that day, I would say 90% of them, 95, probably thought that this was over, because there's really never been a successful basically a water landing, a water crash with 100% of people surviving. Never. First time in history.
So you're on the plane, everything is going hunky-dory, and then when was the first moment you realized that things were no longer going hunky-dory?
Well, 60 seconds after we took off, I heard an explosion. I was in seat 15A, which is 4 rows behind the left wing. So when I heard the explosion is when I looked up and looked out the window. I saw fire coming out with the left wing. So I knew something had happened. Like I said, phase one, part one is planes have multiple engines, right? We'll go back to the airport, get another plane, we're delayed. But no one knew at that moment in time, no one. That's what happened where I was sitting and I saw also happened simultaneously on the right side of the plane. And the birds hit exactly at the same moment. So everybody on the plane at that moment heard one loud explosion. And I tell people, my thought process is if those birds were to hit bang, bang, then you're thinking a whole different thing. Terrorist attack, right? Something's going down. You're in New York, plane's going towards Manhattan. But since that happened, people thought, okay, we got another engine. It's because we started banking. So we're okay, right? No one's freaking out because we're just going back to the airport until you look out the window and see the George Washington Bridge coming up. Like, all right, I've never seen that before. And as we started crossing over the bridge, and the plane only cleared the bridge by roughly 400 feet, the bridge is 600 feet up, the plane was 1,000 feet. That's when you heard the captain say, "This is your captain, brace for impact." That's the moment you know it's serious. The captain uses the word dire, I use the word serious, whatever it is not good. So now you're roughly 60 seconds from crashing into the river. And you better get your stuff together, Todd. So that's how I would say part 3, right? Now you know it's serious. What are you going to do about it? Because now you have no control. It's going to happen, right? But the only thing you can control is your mind. That's one thing I've had a lot of training in, is how to manage my mind through the crisis. Because I was also head of security for a guy for over 10 years. And I got to be with a world master on how to manage your mind, right? So fortunately for me, I use those skills, but you're still 60 seconds away from crashing and you may not come back. That's when you pretty much know that you better have everything lined up. It's going to happen. But then you crash and you survive. That's a bonus. Unfortunately, you're in the water, and the plane is starting to sink. Water's coming in immediately because as it hit, it put a big hole in the back of the plane. The water's coming in. So now you got part of the problem. Now you're in a sinking plane in a river, 36 degrees. How are you going to get out? That's part two. That's where things got really serious pretty quick. Because you cannot control phase one, right? It's going to happen. But phase two, getting out, you can control. And that's where a lot of the skills that I learned and other people learned came into play. And that's what I think I tell people the real heroes were at that moment, where the first responders showed up and how everybody reacted at that moment in time. So, yeah, that's so that's how we're breaking down. So how when you thought things got serious and how they did get serious.
There was a small blip, and I didn't hear who you worked for 10 years. Who was the person you worked for?
I worked for a gentleman named Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins. Okay. I had this sense it was an important name. So there was an internet glitch. So I just wanted to make sure. Okay. All right. So you worked for Tony Robbins.
I was head of security for Tony for 10 years.
Okay. So you're sitting, you've had the moment, you got on the plane, everything's going hunky-dory, the engines blow up. You start to think to yourself, oh, okay, they've blown up. It's not the end of the world. We're going to go back to the airport. Then the captain comes on and says, well, actually, guys, I'm really sorry, but brace for impact. Then you hit the water. And you said that the worst part of it, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but the most challenging part of it was when the water started to come into the plane. Okay. So I'm trying to imagine what on earth was going on, not just within your mind, because you're trained based on what you've said to me, but in the mind and the collective mind of all the people on the plane. So can you tell me, after you hit the water, what happened?
So we hit the water, looked out, saw that we were alive. Great. Water's coming in. Where I was on the plane at 15A, water was about knee to waist level. But so it's cold water, but you don't feel it because of the adrenaline. Because everybody's collective mindset at that point was, we got to get the hell out, right? Because things are going very quickly. So no one lost their heads. I tell people that was a great thing, metaphor for me. No one lost it. No one was pushing people out of the way. People knew they had to move, but it had to be very quickly. So when it came my time I got to the aisle, I had a choice. What happened? Something happened to me that made a choice. Because my thought process, Leon, was get to the aisle, get up and get out. I kept saying in my mind, aisle up, out. That's my. But then I heard my mom start talking in my head. My mom passed away in 1990. But then when I was a child, she would tell me something, just kicked into my head, and if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And at that moment in time, this happened so quick. It had to happen very quickly. I could either go out, or like I grew up in small towns, you take care of people. I climbed over the seats to the back of the plane to see if anybody needed help. And at the back of the plane, water is about chest level deep because it was already underwater. The plane was like this. And people were moving pretty quickly. So I just got behind everybody else. But now the back of the plane is hit first. The bins had broken open. Luggage is thrown out. Luggage is floating in the water. You're trying to get out, and it's dark because it's underwater. So the first light that I saw was on the right side of the plane. And it was at 10F. I'm like, I'm out of here. Time to go. So I was the last person in the back going out. I looked out, but there was no room on the wing or the boat for me. It was already filled up. And that's how I got to be in the side of the plane, waist deep in 36-degree water for about 7 minutes. Because there was no room on the wing of the plane, on the boat for me. And people were starting to yell at me. And the reason they started yelling at me was because that lifeboat that comes out, when you open the door, it comes out. It started floating out into the river because of the current. And they, like probably you and me, I didn't read the instructions. No, the instructions. It's tethered. But they didn't know that, so I was holding on to this little lifeboat, waist deep in 36-degree water, because that way people could get on the wing and walk out. So that's why I was in the plane, and how I became the last passenger out of the plane. I was inside the plane for about 7 minutes until I felt the plane shift. And what happened, I found out later, was one of the boats, part of the rescue, as he was backing out, he hit the front of the plane. He hit the front of the plane, shook the plane, fell on my back, and my first thought was Titanic. I immediately thought of that movie because all I could see was that boat tipping up. Everybody went with it. I'm like, don't be sucked down in a plane, right? I mean, you're done then. You have no shot. So then I had to employ something my mom and dad made me learn when I was a kid, swimming. I had to jump in and swim. And I tell people I was the longest 15-yard swim of my life because I had the closest boat was at the end of the wing. So I just jumped in, fully clothed in the 36-degree water, and the water also had jet fuel in it because of the crash. That's why I got to wear glasses, because I got jet fuel in my eyes. But I had to swim for my life. And that's how I got into the wing where there was. But now I got another problem, Leon. How am I going to get on the boat? I mean, I've been in the water for over 10 minutes now. I'm so cold. But somebody, I kept yelling, I can't. And somebody reached down, two guys picked me up, one arm, and pulled me on the ferry. And that's how I got out of the water. But then I'm sitting in the ferry, I stand up, and I'm thinking, man, I made it. But now you got another problem. Not only have you been in water, 36-degree water, the air temperature is 11 degrees Fahrenheit, and now all the adrenaline's gone because you think you made it. And I got so cold I couldn't breathe. Fortunately, I got someone let me use their phone. That's how my family found out that I was in a plane crash. When they got me to shore, I couldn't walk. So they had two people had to carry me to the triage center, where they took all my clothes off down to my underwear. And I'm sitting there in my underwear now. I don't know what's going on now. And the guy over here is like me, and the girl over here didn't have underwear on, and we're all looking at each other with no clothes on. It's like, what's going on? And somebody walked up to me, Leon. He had a card in his hand. He said, I need your name and date of birth. He writes on the card. He puts it on my right ankle. And then he walks away. Didn't say a word. And the first thing I thought was, like that show MASH in the 70s. Take your toe. You didn't make it. That's exactly what I didn't make it. I said, it's like the movie Ghost. I'm just watching myself die. Right? I didn't make it. Fortunately, someone took my blood, the EMT took my blood pressure. There was 190 over 120. You got to get out of here. You have a heart attack or a stroke. You got to go. And that's when things started picking up for me. They put me on the gurney and wheeled me out. And that's how I got to the hospital. But there's a lot of touch and go times. Not only with that, is when I got to the hospital, my oxygen level was dropping so quickly. My body temperature was 94 degrees at hypothermia, and I could barely breathe. And I tell people now with COVID, we know what all this means. Back then, I didn't know what oxygen level meant, but now with COVID, we know if you drop below 90, you get some problems. Mine was 75 and dropping. So I could barely breathe. So it took them 5 hours basically to get my body going again. That was a long 5 hours. That's how I got through a plane crash, survived it, and then my life changes 180 degrees at that point on.
My next question to you was going to be about how your life changed, but I want to go back a little bit before I get to that question. And that is, you said that you were in the plane by yourself for 7 minutes. What happened to you in those 7 minutes? There
were a lot of things going on. And I was hanging out of the plane. Fortunately for me, Leon, what happened, I'll regress this and start answering the question. 2 weeks after the plane crash, I was invited to be on Good Morning America. Passed some passengers and myself and the crew. And the first picture that the Good Morning America show was me, waist deep in water, hanging out of the plane. I used this. And I didn't realize it at that point, right? Until I saw it. And the 7 minutes go by really slow. 7 minutes is not that much, but when all stuff's breaking loose, I mean, there's a lady that wouldn't move off the wing, right? I mean, so we all had to help her figure out how to move, because I tell people in these kind of situations, you can't stand still. You got to keep moving, right? Because you got all these people behind you that need to get off a plane. And we had a lady just standing there. Now, she was in shock. But that doesn't help in a life and death situation. You got to move. So we had to talk with that. We had a lady who tried to get back in the plane. You know, we had to push her out. She tried to go up because she left her purse on the plane. And one of the things they tell you is you leave everything on the plane, right? You go. But she had her purse on that plane. I tell her, she must have gold in that thing, man. Because she went back in to get her purse, and we're like pushing her out. Get out, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of things happening. 7 minutes.
And what was happening inside you during those 7 minutes?
I was in a totally focused state. And I one of the things I tell people is, if you look at the situation, all the crew went out the other side of the plane, the left side of the plane. And if you watch the movie Sully, you'll see that. They documented it well. So the right side of the plane where I was at 10F was totally managed by passengers like me, who had zero training. But what happens in times of crisis like this, or challenging times, is leaders step up. You don't need one thing about leadership is you don't need to know every detail, because leaders need people. They direct people, and they can see the little vision. So my mind was always working, right? How am I going to get out of here? I'm looking around, because part of my job with Tony was I had to be aware I had his back. I had to be aware. And I was always looking, right? I had like a 180-degree look, right? So I was always looking at what's going on. So I wasn't focused on me. I think that was one of the key things that I don't talk about much, but I think when you get a situation, you got to focus outward. Because if you focus on yourself, you just go withdraw and I got to handle myself. No, you got to look outside. How the bigger picture, right? And if you saw the movie, one of the captains of the ferry said exactly the mission that was untold that day, but was realized. No one's dying today. He said that in the movie, but I think everybody on that plane, crew and passenger, had that same mission. We're not going to die, right? After we got done, we're all in this thing together. So I kept my eyes going the whole time. And so I was in a totally focused state. And one of the things I talk about in my talks is how, fourth step is having focused execution. Because you have no room to slip up. Zero. You make a wrong move, and somebody's life's in danger. Yours or somebody else's. So that's how it happened, man.
Total goosebumps. Before we get to the change question,
Yep.
Captain Sully, like, what was your experience of him during that day? Because there isn't anyone better to explain it than you, because you were the last person out of the plane.
I was last passenger. He was the last person.
Last passenger.
I would say that distinction, because some people get it wrong, and I don't get everybody all fired up.
No. Last passenger.
He was focused. I tell people, well, his superpower. And I said, he and I have shared the stage in the past. And I told him, I said, his superpower is the power of focus. He can laser in, right? I mean, it's a skill set it's not only needed in that somebody like who's a pilot or somebody in that kind of situation, but the ability to phase everything out and have that one focus on that one thing at that moment in time. That's a superpower I'm working on. I wish I could have. Because there are times, Leon, I'm sure not in your situation, where I'll start down a path and I'm good, and all of a sudden something distracts me. Got to refocus. That's right. He's got the power his power of focus. Getting the plane down, getting out, leading people on the left side of the plane, right? Down the plane to see if anybody's left after I left, right? So yeah.
Amazing. So going back to the question of change, how did this experience, I know it's a trite kind of question, but I have to ask it. How did this experience change you, both within and externally?
Well, I tell people there's a lot of things that I really evolved and changed. Two things that were very evident were, number one, I changed what I call my worldview. And, I tell people, it came to me a couple weeks later, that day when I was on Good Morning America. And what happened was, green room, after we were on the show, talking and stuff, the one gentleman who was on the plane as a passenger started yelling, "I never want to see you people again." Just started yelling at people. And my first thought, Leon, was, what's wrong with this guy? We survived the plane crash. We're on national TV. But then I found out something. He lost his job, and he's going through a divorce. I started thinking, how many times in my life have I prejudged somebody that quickly before I knew their backstory? Or as they call it in the movies, the origin story. How many times have I done that? And I've lost relationships, lost jobs, lost money. I could change that one worldview, be less judgmental. How could that change my life? And that's one thing I started working on. And all of a sudden, my life started opening up just by being less judgmental. Say, you know what? I don't care if you're black, white, purple, right? I don't know if you're gay, lesbian. I don't care. I want to make sure I believe what Dr. Martin Luther King said. Judge people by the content of their character. Now, when I changed that, everything opened up in my life. Because I didn't judge people. I used to judge people, right? I quickly judge people, right? And obviously it didn't serve me. So that one thing changed the entire total direction of my life. And then my life changed because I did do that, and now I'm on stages worldwide. I'm talking to people, I'm teaching people, I'm coaching people, I'm writing books. I'm having more influence now than I would ever have by changing that one worldview. And that, everybody has a different situation, right? And had to learn something different. I'm sure other people learn other things, but that was mine. And it was really honed into me because I had the opportunity in 2010, the honor to speak at the 9/11 services here. And my minister, he is now a bishop, but he never heard me speak, Leon, outside of the church. So I said, come on, you're going to see me it's going to be military, law enforcement, dignitaries, right? Very somber. They want me to basically give gratitude, to talk about gratitude. So I did. We were walking back to my car after I got done speaking. He looked at me and said, in the Christian faith, well, I'm a Christian. He said, in the Christian faith, there's one baptism. But he said, as you were talking, all I could see is this. You went in the water person, you came out of the water a different person. It's like you were rebaptized. He said, that's when I realized the worldview changed, right? As soon as I became less judgmental, it's like the skies opened for me.
And how do you teach that to someone that hasn't had an experience like being in a plane crash or having a near-death experience or something so close to being catastrophic? How do you experience that? To teach
That's
them?
A great question. And, it took me some time to sort of figure out how I could impact people doing with that. I was impacting people with some lessons and business and things. I was good at that. But it really came to me about a year ago. It took this long. How I was going to figure out how to do it. And I was speaking. I forget where I was speaking. I think it was somewhere in maybe Tennessee. And I was off the cuff. I said something and then I did something. And all of a sudden it clicked. And I said, my belief is this. Grace is fueled by gratitude. And I said, what is gratitude? Gratitude is giving thanks to something bigger than yourself. I said, I can tell you gratitude is, and we could talk about gratitude. I'm grateful, but the way you're really going to get this is if you get it in your body. Immerse. So I did this closed eye process about gratitude. And also I saw people start crying, people feeling gratitude, feeling what it's like. Just give it up, right? Just say thank you. I said, I got it. That's it. If I could get people not only to hear it and see it, but feel it, then I can really have impact somebody's life. And that's how I do it.
I'm not sure what you know about me, but I also do speeches. And it's quite powerful what you just said about getting people to feel it. Because at the end of my speech, I tell I talk about the quote from Maya Angelou, where she said, people don't remember what you say to them. They only remember how you make them feel.
Exactly. And you and I can inspire people, but unless they get it right here, they get it in their body, right? And they're walking out shaking, and they're like visualizing it. All the systems. Because one thing I talk about is you got to incorporate all the senses. Because maybe I'm a visual person, maybe you're an auditory person. My daughter's a kinesthetic person. She feels things more than I do. She'll cry looking at it, right? So I've got to figure out when I get on stage, every person in that audience, Leon, has one of their primary sense, a different primary sense. But I got to be able to connect to each person in that room. So I got to make them hear it, see it, feel it. Because one of those will hit everybody in that room. And that's when it came together for me.
And it's a privilege, I think, to be able to get to that space where you can touch a life from the heart. Right?
It is a privilege. I'm honored to be, every time someone asks me to be on stage, I'm honored. I tell people, people will say, well, how do you do it so quick? I said, it's a privilege. You have to earn that privilege. People want it right now. They want education, and people go, well, you just all of a sudden you got all this and that's like, no. The first 70 times I spoke, I did it for free because I wanted to be able to figure out how could I impact people's lives. I didn't take a cent. I said I had to, like Tom Brady's talking, you have to put the reps in. You have to put the time in, right? You're not going to be Tony Robbins or Brian Tracy or any of these guys and gals. It took them 30 years to get to where they're at. Right? You think you can do it tomorrow? You got to earn the right because it's a privilege.
And sometimes to get to that privilege, you have to go through pain.
That's right.
I wonder, did you suffer any PTSD from being in that situation?
Interesting question, Leon. I don't know whether I did or not, but I'll tell you what happened. So it was about 3 years. It was 2013. Yeah, 3-4 years later, I got a phone call from the editor of AARP magazine. You know what AARP magazine is?
Yeah.
Right? All people.
Yeah.
And he wanted to interview me. So why do you want to interview me? I'm young. I'm not old. What can I contribute, right? He goes, well, there were 2 universities doing a study on you about something called PTGS. I said, what's that? He goes, post-traumatic growth syndrome. It's the opposite of PTSD. Because you're one of the few people who've ever grown out of a situation like this, where the captain and other people went to depression. What did you do differently? So I did this interview. And I shared what I did differently to grow from a traumatic life event instead of going into a depressed state. It caught on, so I did a TED Talk about it. And it's a topic that no one's really ever talked about or thought about until recently, when the military is out talking about teaching the people transitioning out of the military how to grow. And that's one of the things I do now with the military. I help them when they're transitioning out. Because a lot of them don't know what to do. They get depressed. They've been through war. They've been through challenges. They've had structure. And now they're in this world where no one gives a rat's. They go to depression. So now I teach them, I show them how you can grow instead of going to depression. So the answer to the question is, I don't think I did, but I know I did have PTGS.
So what did you do to not go down into the cave?
Well, there's a lot of things that I did, and I document all those. But one of the things I'll share with you very quickly that I didn't realize that I did, but it really helped me. And I'll equate it to the other people on the plane. I'll just use this small circumstance: 150 passengers, our crew, passengers. The week after the plane crashed at my church, for the first time I ever spoke, right? And I had impact, right, nice and all that, and I had something that really changed it. But what I realized is this: I started getting invited to speak a lot. First, it was in churches and Chamber of Commerce's and Red Cross events. Then it became corporations and bigger events, right? So what happened was this: is the more I spoke about it, the more I my body processed it. Contrast that to passengers. There's a couple who have spoken like me, but most about it. They had internally. They just kept it in. They didn't get it out. So what happened? Started going down, right? They got in a depressed state. They lost their job. Something happened, right? So one of the strategies I tell people is you got to be able to process it and get it out of your body, physically out of your body. And the way you do that, one of the ways I did that is I spoke. I spoke out and kept getting it out. And also I got it out of my mind, right? And I started impacting people's lives. So going back to what I talked about on the plane, focusing on the bigger picture instead of myself. There's a lot of other things like, state management, how to manage your body and things like that. There's a lot of things I talk about in that. But processing it by speaking is probably that was the first way I started to get this out and get this starting to grow instead of going the other way. That was the first thing I did.
I absolutely love what you just said. And I'll tell you why. Because I have experienced the need to speak and to share pain. I do it on stages. I do it in therapy sessions. I do it by writing. And I always tell people, which is basically exactly what you just said, that if you don't share your pain, it will consume you. And ultimately, it will destroy you. And I think that's why so many of us struggle, because we feel like we don't have anywhere to share our pain, or we shouldn't share our pain, or someone is going to get upset if we share our pain. But if you don't share your pain, the end result is very bad. And
we're seeing that. We're seeing that lately. And we're seeing that lately, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you are a perfect example of someone that had to make a decision, whether it was conscious or not. The decision was share or don't share. And you shared. And now by sharing, you are touching lives in a way where you get to inspire others to share.
That's right.
Right. So what is the name of, because I'm going to read this book. What is the name of the book that you wrote about what you just explained?
So I'm glad you asked that question. If you look behind me, those are the 3 books. Can you see those books?
Yes.
So the first book, Brace for Impact, that's basically just a small portion of my story. The second book is called Moments Matter. That's my first one I wrote in entirety. And it really tells about the skills I used that day. But the third book, and what I'm going to be actually 2 weeks from today, or June 15th, 3 weeks, is we're publishing From Turmoil to Triumph. That's what tells you the story on how to do it. And I go into detail. I tell 12 lessons and then the real lesson. Because what happened to me, Leon, is I wrote this book about a year ago. I was ready to publish it. And then I had the opportunity and got invited last summer to swim with the Navy SEALs in the Hudson River. And I hadn't swam since 1979. And I did this with the elite of the elite in the river that I almost took my life. And the real lesson comes to what I just talked about a few minutes ago. Is 400 meters to go. I had so much gratitude. I thought I went in for a different reason, but the real reason was I want to leave on my terms. And when I did that, I had so much gratitude, right, that I just gave it up. So the book's about all the things that I did, and the real lesson comes with gratitude. So third book is going to come out June 15th. I'm excited. I'm down to 2 chapters of final edits, and we're ready to rock and roll.
Turmoil to Triumph.
From Turmoil to Triumph. Yep.
It sounds like the perfect title for this podcast, because you went through hell, and along with many other people, but you found yourself in a triumphant place. And it reminds me of a famous quote. Again, I always say this quote, but I can't control myself. So from Winston Churchill, when you find yourself walking through hell, keep walking.
Keep walking.
And it's sometimes easy to like hear that and be like, oh, yes, I want to do that. But unless you have someone who's giving you the specific steps of what to do, it's difficult to do. So I'm telling you that I am going to read that book. Yeah. And I am going to follow everything that you say in that book. Okay. Because clearly it worked for you. And I am very positive it'll work for me. And I'm in a period of my life where there is some turmoil, right? And I want to get to the place of triumph, and I need someone to guide me. Do this, this, and this. And what do you know? A random podcast on a Thursday afternoon, and it's here it is. So I appreciate the fact that you've written this book, that you've had like an unbelievable experience, which you've used to like not just shift your own life, but to shift many lives, I'm sure.
Well, thank you very much, Len. I'm honored. One of the things of being around Tony, I've been very blessed to be around people like Tony who've taken interest in me and mentored me. But one of the things that he talks about in public, he tells you in private, if you want to get any outcome, model somebody who's got the outcome that you want, and you'll get it, right? So all I did is I took that mindset. I modeled, and one of the strategies that I talk about is my first mentor, Bill, taught me, and I expanded it to my virtual roundtable where I divided my life into all these different areas and went back and find who's the best of the best in that area, and I do a deep person. Give you an example. Leadership is one of the areas I love. I talk about leadership in times of crisis. I believe the greatest leader in the history of the United States is Abraham Lincoln. So I do an immense study on Abraham Lincoln, his mindset, how he led, how he took this country and kept together in times of crisis. Sort of like we're doing right now, right? It's going on in this country right now. So I've taken each one of my areas of my life and found the best of the best. And I understand and I model what they do. And that's what's sort of helped me start taking this thing off. Because one thing I tell people, Leon, is, and you just sort of referenced it in an indirect way a moment ago. The last 2.5 years have not just been about COVID. It's been about social justice questions. It's been about police. It's been about an election that kept going on and on. The vitriol the people have for each other. Oh, by the way, we still got natural disasters. Oh, by the way, we have these unfortunate, these mass murders. So all this turmoil is just stacking on people. And like you said, and we talked about it, if you don't get it out, it consumes you. And that's what's happened in the last 2 years. It stacks so deep on some people, they don't know how to get out. My goal of this book is I'll give you a pathway. How I did it, it worked for me. And it's common sense stuff, right? But sometimes, like my mentor told me, Leon, years ago, one of the things I write about in this book, the things I learned from my mother, but I didn't listen to her. It took somebody else to tell me and teach me, right? And knock it in the head. And so the things we learned, we already know this stuff. But maybe we didn't hear it the way we need to hear it. Sometimes you need that third party. Tells you a different, maybe share with you a different way, or like my mentors did for me, share their lessons by stories. And that's how I learned it. I learned all these things, and I needed to have it. And then in 6 minutes on a plane crash, I had to employ it. I had to, right? And then afterwards, I had to employ it. And I changed the worldview. And now it's the thing that started opening things up. And people who came into my life, I would never have the opportunity to speak to you unless this happened. Now I've got somebody else I can banter off of, right? We can talk about it. If I can help you, I'll help you, right? If you can help me, I'm sure there's some things you can probably help me with. This is how it works. You can't keep it in. Give.
I feel deeply honored that you agreed to come on the podcast. I feel privileged to have heard your wisdom. And I feel very lucky that I'm going to read your book, because trust me, that is the book I need. Right now, I'll wait until June 15th and then I'll read it. We'll exchange emails at the end. I'll let you know. We'll chat. I'd love to stay connected. You're clearly a man of courage, but you're clearly also a man that is on a mission. And that mission is, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but to me, it seems like a mission to help people become better, to help people deal with their pain, to help people. End of story, right? And it's a privilege and an honor, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Leon. I mean, my mission, and my current mentor's name's Don. I had this discussion. My mission is to teach this what I'm talking about, this book, to 1 million people here. And it's a big goal, but I want to get it done. And this is one avenue I can do it. So if I can help you and any of your friends, love to stay in touch. Please make sure we get a copy of this and I get your email. Okay?
Absolutely.
And so when the book comes out, I'd love to sign a book for you.
It would be a privilege. I'll definitely do that.
All right, man.
Man, thank you so much.
I'm honored. Thank you, Leon. Blessings.
Bye.
Hello everyone, it's Leon here, aka The Kindness Guy. If you like my videos, which I hope you do, don't forget to press the subscribe button and also to ring the little bell so that the notifications notify you that I have a new video out in the world.